All right, we're going to get started here. Lovely to have you all with us this afternoon. Hello and welcome to Bringing Nature Home Habitat Restoration. We're so excited to have you all joining us this afternoon to learn more about how we can protect, care for, and restore the natural habitat that surrounds us. My name is Danny, and I will be your guide and moderator for this webinar. But before we get started, I'm going to pass it over to one of our presenters, Kiran, to give us a land acknowledgement.
Hello everyone, it's nice to see you all. Thanks everyone for coming. This year we are doing our events differently, and this is our virtual Bringing Nature Home Habitat Restoration webinar with Meera Dyer, Park, and then Kiran Bhattarhai from OPIRG Guelph, and the part of the 2Rivers Festivals 2020. Before we get started, I'm going to start with the land acknowledgement, and I will pass it to the Danny. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississauga of the New Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us. Today, the virtual meeting place is at the city of Guelph, an ancestral and treaty land of several indigenous peoples, including the Atawandran people and the Mississauga of the Credit. And we recognize and honor our Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Métis neighbors. We acknowledge that the work presented here has occurred on their traditional lands so that we might work to build the partnership relationship that respect, honor, and value the culture, tradition, and wisdom of those who have lived here since time immemorial. A land acknowledgement doesn't exist in past tense because colonialism is a current ongoing process, and we need to be mindful of our present participation in that process. Now, Danny will chat briefly about the 2Rivers festivals.
Thank you so much for that, Kiran. This event is part of the 2Rivers Festival that celebrates and appreciates the Speed and Hermosa rivers. Our hearty thanks to the organizers for this event for sharing their passion for our rivers with you, and thanks to each and every one of you for being with us to attend this event. The festival is organized and run by volunteers and involves many community organizations. So whenever you're able, please do show your support to these organizations that are doing so much good work in our community. One organization in particular really needs to be mentioned, which is the Guelph Outdoor School, who is our event sponsor and generously makes this festival possible each year, as well as everyone who buys ad space in the 2Rivers Festival Guide. You can see all our advertisers on our website where you RSVP'd for this event or in the 2Rivers booklet. Overall, there are 40 great events happening over the course of the next 2 months. So lots of other opportunities to RSVP to the events that pique your interest. And finally, this festival is a project of the Wellington Water Watchers, who I have the privilege of working with. It is our hope that if we fall in love with our rivers, we will want to further protect them now and into the future. Just an administrative note for you, which is that we will be recording these events to share later. So if you do not feel comfortable with having your face in the recording, please know that you can turn off your video at any time. All right, it is my great pleasure to introduce Meera Dyer and Kiran Bhattarhai, who made an amazing and informative presentation for you today. They're going to cover a lot of ground in a short amount of time, so please feel free to type any questions into the chat box, and we'll have time for a Q&A session after their presentation as well. So without further ado, I'll send it over to you, Meera and Kiran.
Great, thanks, Danny. Okay, Kiran, go ahead.
Hi, this is Kiran, and I am a Speed River project coordinator at the OPIRG Guelph, and doing these things since a long time. I'm going to introduce briefly our OPIRGs. The OPIRG Guelph stands for Ontario Public Interest Research Group Guelph, and it is established in 1976 as a public interest research group at the University of Guelph, and we are run by the volunteer, not-for-profit organization, focuses on social and environmental justice. And what we do exactly is that try to strengthen and link between the University of Guelph and local community in addressing issue of the environmental and social justice in the community. And we collaborate, partner with the campus and community groups, and provide funding opportunities to the people, and giving the activist training, radical resource library we have, and running various river and habitat restoration program through the 2Rivers project since 1988. For more details, please visit our website www.opirgguelph.org. Here's a webinar guidelines. Everyone keep your mic muted. We'll have an opportunity for questions later after our presentation. We'll send the webinar recording out after the event. You can have access. Today's webinar will teach you Canadian forestry in global context, habitat restoration, pictures and video of the real planting, how we do, about the native plants, and we'll talk about the why native plants and the importance of native plants and invasive plants in the Guelph, and about its impact on native species and why that is important. Pollinator, how to establish a pollinator garden, and rebuilding habitats in our garden and parks. And we'll leave with you from resources, different resources. You can have that. Canadian forestry in global context, because we are doing the restoration program. That's why habitat restoration. I'm giving the little bit global context. Since the onset of the agriculture, the global number of trees has lost by 45%. And research shows that we lost over 15 billion trees each year around the world. Canadian has the second position in number of the trees after Russia, but we are low in tree density. You can see in the figure, we have only 32,000 trees per square kilometer. You can read this, all those things. Can you move to another slide?
Oh, sorry. Yep.
Okay. We are running the habitat restoration program. What is the habitat restoration? We'll bring back our or put back something we lost. We wanted to bring original state at some extent, not all over, and then we can do the repairing to our environment and the habitat for the animals and the plant. But because of the restoration, we can reverse some extent, not all fully, because it is some level it's possible, some it is not, but it is definitely improve water quality, improve the and then protect the biodiversity of our urban river corridor. And what the restoration program? Most of the restoration program is, how can we do? We can join in a neighborhood groups for the restoration program who are running over there, and then we can increase the riverbank vegetation to filter surface runoff, and we can introduce native and remove invasive plant, which species around your neighborhood, for the open space for your yard or riverbank, and you can join with a different organizer. That's how we can restore the habitat. And installation and the cleaning of the pollinators' habitats, such as a regular cleaning of the birdhouses, which the city and the nature center established in our neighborhood. And we can join in this program, and installation of the different educational sign around the area, what is needed. That is our contribution to the restoration program. Why we plant native species along the riverbank? There are lots of benefits because of the tree plantations, which is the riparian vegetation provides several important physical function that supports aquatic biodiversity, which stabilize the stream bank, control the erosion, and sediments put into the bank erosion. The shades, what gives the tree can cool the water in the river and maintaining low water temperature and regulating dissolved oxygen level. It increases the oxygen level high, and which contributes substantial quantities of large woody debris to the aquatic system, providing an extreme complexity essential for the success of the insect, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and fish. And it also deposit large amount of the leaf litter, insect, and nutrient that are crucial for the viability of the aquatic food webs. And the trees, the vegetation along the river bank, over time, native flora and fauna will improve biodiversity along the river bank, which will increase the native animal habitat. And the riparian zones provide one of the most important route for the yearly migratory movements of the aquatic, terrestrial, and aerial animals. And riparian vegetation also provides important ecosystem services, including sequestering pollutant and the excess nutrient entering stream from the surrounding landscape and river runoff. And here are some of our restoration activities pictures, how the neighborhood groups join with our program. And you can see this is particularly from the Wolfhorn Park neighborhood groups. Thank you so much for the Wolfhorn Park people who lives as residents and the active members. I can show the pictures of the Sue, Meera, and Hillary, and all the groups and all the kids who joined for this. I have some of the video here, how we do run the actual tree planting. You click the video. Can you click this? This is 2018 fall. We planted the trees this area, and you can show the another pictures how it looks in the fall. After this video, we can see the
Sorry,
picture.
guys, this is not my, there. Okay, there we go.
There's another pictures here. This is how the area is covered by all the wildflowers and then trees. And can you do the another video?
No, I don't have access to the other one. Kiran, do you want to just explain that one?
This is the actually this is the video of the Silver Creek Park planting. We have a lot of volunteers, and then they are involved in the planting. Some people are bringing the water and watering the plants. Some people are digging the hole, and it is a teamwork, and everybody is enjoying the sun and then planting trees. And then we have a lot of vegetation along the Silver Creek Park. I just had a video, and then I want to show you guys, but it's we are just technically.
That's okay.
None of us are Zoom experts, so
No.
you'll have to bear with us through any technical.
Can you see the full screen there, Danny?
It's in the minimized right now. So if you,
Okay.
I don't know if you can click onto the expand.
I'm trying, but I don't see how to do that.
It should be that box that you were hovering over there. Yeah, it should be.
Yeah, it's not, it doesn't seem to be.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much, everyone. Meera is going to start her presentation soon.
Okay. So, hi, everybody. My name is Meera, as we've said. I'm a mother of 3 and a teacher. I also grew up in the bush, and so nature is really important to me. So I'm just here to talk about local solutions to species extinction. The title of this presentation is inspired by this particular book right here. It's called Bringing Nature Home by Doug Tallamy. He's a professor and chair of the Department of Entomology and Wildlife Ecology at the University of Delaware in Newark, Delaware. Much of the statistics in this presentation are drawn from his work. So by planting native plants, we create valuable habitat that the animals we care about need to survive. A native plant is a grass, flower, shrub, or tree that has been here for thousands of years and evolved relationships with other species. We can no longer rely on the natural areas outside of our cities to provide the habitat needed for wildlife because it does not exist. 70% of the forests along the eastern seaboard of North America are now gone. Compare this to 15% of the Amazon. We've paved over 43,480 square miles to create roads between 1982 and 1997 in North America. Think about what's happened now. We have removed habitat and replaced it with over 40 million acres of suburban lawns, which most species find uninhabitable. It is no surprise that in southern Ontario, 30% of our butterfly species are threatened, 12% of our birds are on the verge of extinction, and this number is rising. Yet it doesn't have to be this way. Many species can coexist happily beside us. In Europe, pollinator populations are on the decline. However, in Amsterdam, in a city of 2.3 million, they have had an increase in the local bee population by 45%. They introduced native plants to public gardens, home gardens, and previously unused grass areas. They banned the use of chemical pesticides and encouraged homeowners to create insect hotels. By 2015, 21 species of bees not previously found in the city were present. This is inspiring. On average, native plants and trees support 75% more species than non-native plants. Native oaks are top of the list, and one red or white oak will support 517 different species of butterflies and moths. Willow is next, followed by cherry, plum, birch, and poplar. The reason they create habitat is because insects require native plants to survive. Insects are the primary method of taking energy from plants and moving it up the food chain. They eat the plants and everything else eats them. This includes birds. 96% of birds require insects to feed their babies. An adult chickadee needs between 390 and 570 caterpillars per day to feed a growing clutch of chicks. They weigh only 1 ounce. Think about what a woodpecker baby would need. Yet, caterpillars, along with 90% of insects, are specialized. This means there's only a narrow lineage of plants that they can eat, lay their eggs, and complete their life cycle with. The caterpillar of the monarch is a specialist on milkweed, which we know, but why? Milkweeds defend their tissues with a milky latex sap that gels on exposure to air. Insects that attempt to eat milkweed leaves soon find that their mouthparts are glued permanently shut by the sap. Monarchs, however, block the flow of sap to milkweed leaves. The ability to detoxify cardiac glycosides and block latex sap in milkweeds does not confer the ability to disarm the chemical defenses found in other plant lineages. It took thousands of years of coevolution for monarchs to be able to eat milkweeds. Yet, of the 2,137 native plant genera, a monarch can only develop on one of these, which is the milkweed genus Asclepias. If milkweeds disappear, so do the monarchs, yet monarch butterflies are not the exception. This specialization on one or two lineages of plants is typical of 90% of the insects that eat plants. As I mentioned, this specialization takes thousands of years to develop. This is the reason why so few of our insects can use introduced plants. Without native plants, there are very few insects. Why does this matter? Because without insects, the rest of the food chain collapses. Thus, if we want to mitigate species extinction, which we do, we have to start with native plants because they support native insects, which then supports everything else. This is a Luna moth, and its host plant is a birch tree. Now, some introduced plants, such as the butterfly bush, do provide nectar and pollen. That's great. However, if there's only the butterfly bush, there would be no butterflies because there's not one that can use this plant to complete its life cycle. The relationship between plants and insects takes thousands of years to develop, as you can see between the monarch and the milkweed. Phragmites, this reed here, which I'm sure many of you recognize, is a wetland reed from Europe. It is found in ditches everywhere here. Despite being here for 500 years, it was likely used as packing material in the holds of the earliest sailing ships. It provides food and shelter to only 5 native insects. Adaptation is happening, but it's at a glacial rate. Compare this to 170 species of insects in its homeland. Phragmites is not an exception. So, complicating matters are invasive species. Invasive plants are introduced species that displace native plant communities. Many of these are purchased, planted in our gardens, and then escaped. A lot of them came from our gardens and from the nurseries. Invasive species have an enormous competitive advantage over most native species as they have arrived without their suite of natural enemies, such as insects, mammals, and diseases that keep them in check in their homeland. Some are brought over here because of their resistance to insects. So think about periwinkle, for example. But why are they not good? Don't they increase our plant diversity? In some ways, yes. There are more kinds of plants here now than there was before. As mentioned, though, our insects have not evolved with these introduced plants. They cannot use them to complete their life cycle. Thus, in areas with many invasives or just introduced plants, there is much less habitat. In one study conducted by Doug Tallamy, he compared an invasive plant hedgerow with a native plant hedgerow. In the native hedgerow, there was 68% more caterpillar species and 91% more caterpillars altogether. This does not include the dozens of species that depend on these caterpillars. The use of introduced plants is one of the factors that has caused the great decline in 432 species of birds in North America. It's a lot of work to remove invasive species. It can take a long time and be physically intensive. However, it is worth it. Even if we only choose a small area to combat, removing invasives and planting natives will increase exponentially the species numbers and diversities in that particular place. So in Guelph and in a lot of southern Ontario, two of the common invasive plants are garlic mustard and European buckthorn. So in order to remove garlic mustard, it was brought here from Europe, most likely from the British Isles. It lives for 2 years. First-year plants produce a rosette of dark green kidney-shaped leaves with scalloped edges. I apologize to those people who already know a lot about garlic mustard. The second-year plant starts to get some height up to about 1 meter, as you can see over here. In May, they produce white flowers followed by narrow seed pods, which release hundreds of seeds. The second-year plant dies later in the fall. If you rub its leaves, it has a really strong garlicky flavor, and it's also edible. It was brought over as an edible and has high amounts of vitamin C. So once you recognize it, you'll see it everywhere, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed when thinking about removing it. However, choose an area that you care about, like we mentioned before, and one that you think you can handle. The size does not matter. Pull all the garlic mustard that's there before it drops its seeds. This is May to mid-June at the latest. For the first-year plants, you'll need to pull out the roots. Second-year plants, you can just cut them near the bases. It's going to die the second year anyway. The goal is to get them before they drop their seeds. Put the plant in plastic bags. Do not put them in your compost, as the seeds do last a really long time. The next step is to plant the area with natives. Choosing aggressive ground covers help. In our park, we found that wild strawberry, goldenrod, asters, and Virginia creeper do well. There's other ones as well. The mustard does come back the following year, so it needs to be removed again. Seeds can hide in the soil for a long time, so it does require persistence. However, each year there's a little less. Another really common one, which is moving up north, is European buckthorn. Two identifiers that I find helpful are that the females have these black berries. There's these thorns over here. So basically the thorns and the berries are really great ways to be able to identify them. So in order to remove European buckthorn after the rains is great. For the little ones, you can just pull them out by the roots. You do need to get them out by the roots. When they get a bit bigger, these tools are fun. They're called an extractivator. If you're in Guelph, you might be able to get them from the city. My email is at the end. You can probably just ask me and I can help you with that, and see if there's one that you can get. So you just take it and you can use it to pull out the buckthorn, or you can use a shovel. If it's big, you have to cut it down, and then you can use these buckthorn baggies that are here. Some people have used herbicides. I know that's controversial. So if you do decide to use the baggies, just watch out because the shoots will come out from the bottom. Okay, so let's go on. What else can we do to rebuild habitat? So we can start in our parks, as we mentioned, in our gardens and on our balconies. So volunteering at a local park is very helpful. As we mentioned before, and Kiran went into that, I don't need to go into that more. If you are interested in volunteering, or even if you have a park in your area that you would like to remove some of the garlic mustard, you can do that. And you can contact OPIRG as well, because there's lots of volunteer opportunities for rewilding the park post-COVID. Okay. Next, we can go into our own yards. So I'm not saying to pull up all of our grass and remove all of our non-native gardens. Although if you want to, that'd be great. However, when we go to the nursery, consider purchasing a native plant over an introduced one. For example, the Norway maple from Europe is the most common shade tree in North America now. It is escape cultivation is rapidly displacing our native trees. However, not one bird will nest in a Norway maple. Choosing a sugar maple will support 285 species of butterflies and moths. You also get to have maple syrup. And Healthy Landscapes, a program here in Guelph, We'll come by and suggest plant species for your yard. Again, not now, but later. Okay, so we can also convert unused grass areas. Creating a pollinator island around the base of a tree, as you can see right here, helps the little critters complete their life cycle. 94% of caterpillars on an oak tree fall to the ground when the caterpillar is fully grown. There, they burrow into the soil or spin a web in the fallen leaves. A yard with an oak tree surrounded by lawn is very challenging for insects because there's little leaf litter and the soil is difficult to burrow into. So, by building a garden underneath our trees and having places in our yard where it's okay to leave fallen leaves are really important, we help these caterpillars become butterflies or food for our birds. Okay, so we can plant let's see here, we can plant a pollinator garden. I'm currently involved in a program with the David Suzuki Foundation called Butterfly Way. The goal is to plant 12 butterfly gardens at people's homes in Guelph. We provide plant ideas, suggestions on garden design, access to online workshops, and probably some plants. If you're interested, you can let me know. Finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about restoring habitat in a garden. And this is a big topic. If you're interested in terms of design, I highly recommend the following book, which is Planting in a Post-Wild World by Thomas Rainer and Claudia West. So the first idea is to choose your archetype. So do you want to restore a forest, a woodland, or a grassland? And then choose only plants from these palettes. Next, you want to try to plant in layers. So the top layer is the structural layer, and it includes trees and shrubs and high perennials. The second layer is the seasonal layer, which is right down here. And these plants create color or texture at certain times of year. Many of these species are popular garden plants because of their showy flowers and attractive foliage. These include sunflowers, asters, echinacea, and black-eyed Susans. Finally, the ground cover layer, which is down here at the bottom, occupies the lowest layer and weaves in and out of the other plants. They help reduce weeds, improve soil, and provide much habitat in the process. Okay, so which type of plants? First of all, there are keystone species. These are natives that are the best for providing habitat. A landscape with keystone genre supports 70 to 75% more caterpillars. Native oaks, willows, and cherries, as I've said, are the top three. This is a table of woody plants ranked from their ability to support species. So oak, willow, cherry, and then birch is high, poplar, crabapple, blueberry, maple, and elm. So that's the number of butterfly species that they can support beside it. The top herbaceous plants for habitat are goldenrod, asters, and our native sunflowers. Others include wild strawberry and wild geranium. If you're interested, you can go to this website right here, which is the National Wildlife Federation, and they can give you a list of different plants and what species they support. Okay. Another thing that we can do is we can reduce the outdoor light that we have. A light can kill an insect directly after it repeatedly collides with the bulb. It can be fatally exhausted by burning up its energy reserves. In the morning, birds learn that lights are easy meals from exhausted insects, so if possible, consider motion lights. Okay. The other thing is that there's a common nervousness around insects and a concern over them eating our plants. So I'm talking about our ornamental gardens here, not our food gardens. The damage done to our native ornamental gardens is about 10% by our insects. Our plants, the native ones, are evolved to withstand this insect damage. So I would encourage people to just take a few steps back. Then those little insect bites will no longer be noticed. And hopefully, the wider variety of and abundance of birds and butterflies will make it worth it. So, why native? We need wild places, places where our kids can build forts, climb trees, and where we have a place to be calm. Planting more increases carbon sequestration. One oak tree sequesters 10 to 40 tons of carbon. They provide shade, help our watershed, filter the air, support pollinators, connect habitat, and finally, of course, mitigate species extinction. So let's create an environment for all of us to thrive and love, and it's something we can all do. Thanks, everybody. Here's some resource recommendations. They'll be there for you. And yeah, if there's any final questions or comments or any experiences or resources you'd like to share with the group, just let us know.
That was wonderful. I sure learned a lot personally. So we can move into a Q&A session now. I saw some claps from one of our participants, Katie. I echo that. Great job. Um, so if you guys have questions, you can go ahead and put them into the chat, and I can read them on over to for Meera or Kiran to answer. But while you guys are doing that, I actually have a couple questions for you guys.
Sure.
So Meera first. So as a novice gardener myself,
Yeah.
which native plants are easiest to care for and the best bang for your buck as far as creating really good habitat for these beautiful creatures?
Yeah, so it really would depend on your your light and your soil. So for trees, again, um, as I was saying before, oak are great. There's a few different kinds of oaks. So if you've got a lot of sun and open spaces, white oak and red oak are good. Um, and then willow is good. There's a lot of different kinds of willow as well. And cherry is great. There's the smaller cherries, and then there's a great big black cherry, which is really a wonderful tree. Then for our herbaceous plants, there's asters, and they grow very well. There's asters for the sun and for the shade. And then there's the goldenrods as well for sun and shade. And there's sunflowers that are great. And then if you've got like a woodland garden, then there's like wild geranium is a wonderful plant, and that like a lot of people plant hostas underneath them, but there's a lot of wonderful woodland ephemerals which will grow really well. Um, yeah, so wild geranium's a good one. Yeah.
That's great. And then as a follow-up to that, are there any that are particularly good for if I heard you mention balconies.
Yeah.
So what is like the easiest thing that I can't kill if I put it on my balcony?
Yeah, you know what? I'd have to look that up because they're probably good ones for dry, but can I get back to you on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I can maybe add that. That's a great question.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And then Kiran, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more to if people are looking to volunteer or are looking to organize their own group of volunteers, what the process for that looks like, and how they can do that whenever our current restrictions allow us to.
Right.
Oh, you're just muted there. I'm just going to unmute you.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Thanks for questions, and it is great questions because we are looking for the lots of volunteer always. And then if they have a group of the people, they can contact to me at OPIRG Speed River Project at opirggolf.org, or any of the other staff also can reach. And we have a phone number and contact info. And we are looking for the volunteers, and if they have a group of the people and they have a particular time they have a time committed for that, and we can look for the time line. And then we have lots of different around the Guelph, different actually we do only the public area, not the private. We're not planting or anything in the private area, particularly focusing on the riverbank, because it's a more river restoration program too, and habitat restoration and the urban corridor. And any area, if they have found that, okay, I want to do this area much better, then they can also mention that, and we can definitely make the plan.
That's amazing. So it sounds like there's no excuses because it's so easy. So all of us should be able to do it.
That's right. Yeah.
And then, sorry, Meera, did you want to jump into or?
No, I think that's great. Yeah.
Okay, that's
Like I
wonderful.
know that we've partnered with the city of Guelph in the past, and they've been wonderful at providing mulch, and there may be more stuff in the future, and so we just don't know right now because of the whole COVID stuff.
Yeah.
So, but hopefully like that can keep going. So
That's awesome.
Hopefully we will be back in fall, definitely.
yes.
Yes, I hope so too. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
We do have a question from one of our participants. They ask, do you know who in the Kitchener-Waterloo area to contact to borrow an excavator for buckthorn, and maybe I will also widen that for if there are organizations to try and be in contact with in the Kitchener-Waterloo regions too that do the similar kind of work.
Yeah, so there might be, sorry about that, because I know that like the parks and the conservation authorities do habitat restoration and removal of invasive species. So I don't know the answer to that right now. However, I know that like the Grand River, the I think it's I think there's some people on here that would know better than me, but the Grand River Conservation Authority, they do removal. So yeah, I could look into that and see if I could get back to you.
Okay, that's great.
Golf have a tools library. Maybe work here. They can check out the tools library. They can borrow the tools from the Kitchener-Waterloo area. Also, I'm not pretty sure they have a tools library or not, but we have here one.
Yeah.
There's an NGO in Kitchener-Waterloo that I'm thinking of that I just can't, the name just isn't coming to me, but they do support all sorts of sustainable initiatives in there. So when we put this recording onto YouTube, I'll make sure that we link to them as well. Yes, REAP. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of. Someone typed to me in the chat.
Oh,
Thank
good.
you so much.
Perfect.
All I had in my head was the Rare Charitable Reserve, which is what runs some very cool conservation programs as well. But yes, the organization is called REAP in the Kitchener-Waterloo area, and they're a great organization of people. And I know that there's also a similar program in Kitchener-Waterloo to have someone come and assess your land. And REAP is also working in partnership with the municipality to do some of these similar native plant and tree species initiatives as well. So that's pretty exciting.
Great.
Another question, if someone has a lawn area and perhaps they're not necessarily looking to convert it entirely, but is there a way that we can manage lawns in particular that is more friendly to our native species?
Like if we wanted to keep the lawn, is that what you're thinking, Danny? Yeah, so just no fertilizers. Right? No fertilizers and no pesticides. And then there's also grass that you can get from the wildflower farm. They have seeds and they have lawn grass that you can get. And those roots go really deep. So they're really, really good for the soil. And they may have some native grasses mixed in with that. So currently we're taking up all of the lawn in our front and side yards, and we're putting in lawn paths. So we're going to use that grass seed. And another one, which isn't native, but which just gives a bit more diversity, is white clover. And another actually really interesting one to put into our lawns is a type of violet. It's a native violet, and people might already even have it in their lawns. It's purple, and maybe somebody knows the name of it, but it's a purple violet, and it's actually really great for pollinators, and it is native, and it just grows right in the lawn, and you can mow right over it. And that just provides habitat, and you can even walk on it. Another one to put into the lawn is wild strawberry. So wild strawberry, you can walk on it, and as long as you don't mind having like not that perfect picture lawn, then wild strawberry is wonderful because you can walk on it and it provides pollen and it provides strawberries, and so that's a good one too.
I'm all for wild strawberries.
Yeah, of course.
One of the participants asks, when you're talking about no fertilizers for the lawn, is compost included in that?
Compost is great.
Okay.
Yeah, compost is a wonderful thing to put on. Yeah, as long as you can get it small enough. I haven't been able to do that with my personal compost yet, but I'm sure there's other people that can. Yeah.
You're braver than I am doing your own compost.
I just let it sit there.
Yeah, it is a particularly we thought, if you are putting the fertilizer in your lawn and you are indirectly drinking drinking water coming with a fertilizer, you have to think about it, because we are totally dependent on the groundwater.
Right.
Yeah, it's really important, I think, too, to highlight that and recognize that when we're talking about the benefits of these increasing native species and habitat restoration, that the winners are not only the insects, but it's our waterways, and ultimately keeps our water cleaner above and below the ground.
That's right.
Yeah. We're not getting water just in a tap.
All right, I think that is all the questions. If anyone is wanting to unmute and ask their own question, that's totally fine. Also, if you weren't able to figure out the chat feature for any reason. Are there any final questions before we give one more thank you? Oh, we have, what is the mix for garden soil? Compost, topsoil, question mark, question mark, question mark?
So yeah, so certainly a mix of both compost and topsoil, and it's probably something that I would have to look up again, because there's a bunch of different things you can put in to make really, really good soil, and I don't have it at the top of my head. But definitely the one thing though with native flowers, if you're going to do it, they often require less compost than we would put in our vegetable garden. Like sometimes we tend to think that we want to put a whole bunch of nutrients in there to help them, and it's too much for them, because if you think about them growing on thin soil, they often like less nutrients than what we would put in a normal garden. So that's just something to keep. Under black walnut. Yeah, so I was just thinking about this last week. So the top shrubs for black walnut are, so red twig dogwood is a really good one. For a shrub, serviceberry is a really good one as well. They seem to do quite well. The redbud is another good one. And then as for ground cover, I have a list. Is there a way, Danny, that I could share that list with people?
Yeah,
like not right
absolutely.
now, but can I add it to the presentation or something?
Yeah, absolutely. We can, what I'm planning on doing is sharing, we've mentioned a ton of different resources as we've gone along, and I've been keeping a list. So we'll just link all those resources in connection with the video when it goes up onto YouTube. You should be able to find any of these resources that we're mentioning in the description underneath our video.
Yeah, so another one, like white cedar grows really well with black walnut. Bloodroot is a beautiful ground cover that does quite well, and then I'll add the list of the other ones too.
One more is purple flower raspberry, also very good under the walnut.
Great, yeah, those are really nice too.
And then for anyone who that last question was just what would be a good native species to plant under black walnut, just in case you weren't seeing that in the comments there.
Thanks for covering for me, Danny.
Yeah, no problem at all. That's what I'm here for.
Good job.
All right. I don't think that we have any further questions coming in. I don't know if you guys have one more. Are daylilies invasive or still good for pollinators?
So just to clarify, the daylilies, they're the ones with the orange flowers, is that right? Yes. Okay, and so, yeah. Okay, so I don't know, I just removed a whole bunch of daylilies from my property. Now, do you know if they're native or not, Katie? So
Sorry,
if they
just unmuting here. I don't think they're like I thought that daylilies were considered invasive because they can spread through forests and stuff, but I'm just not sure in a garden because they're so good at growing under anything and they
Yeah.
do have flowers, so I'm wondering if they're good for pollinators, but then I'm not sure if they're considered kind of a no-no in terms of a native garden.
Yeah, so I'd have to just, my guess is that they aren't native, although I might be wrong. If they are native, then they're probably okay. If they're not native, then another species, if possible, would be a great choice, as it would help, like, it would, there'd be 75%, they would support 75% more life than a non-native, just as a general rule, and sometimes a lot more than that. So like it may provide some nectar and possibly some pollen, or it might not. And if it's not native, it wouldn't be a host plant. So, you know,
I did a quick internet search,
oh,
and
good for you.
the consensus on the couple of lists that I've seen is that daylilies are not native to our area. And therefore are invasive, but don't quote me on it because it was just a quick internet search. But
Good. Okay.
internet is an amazing resource too for a lot of these things. So if you you can do a better research than I just did.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
All right. I don't know if you guys have any final thoughts that you'd like to share, just on being a good global citizen in relation to this question of being in balance with our natural world, and in a way that honors the natural heritage of the landscapes that we live on.
Yeah. I guess I'd just like to say that planting with natives is really exciting, because it's something that a lot of us can do, and it really, really does make a wonderful difference. Like, no matter where we are, if we find the native plants to our region, we can make a big difference. Like, we've converted a lot of our yard, and just in our one little, like in our yard, we've got way more birds right now than we used to have, which is great. And then down at our park, you know, just by putting in a lot of those native species, it is a way that will work, that we can actually improve the number of butterflies. We can improve the number of birds. Like, it really does. If we want to do something to make a difference, planting natives and taking out invasives is the way to do it, or is one way to do it that does make a difference. I know there's other ways too, but yeah.
Thank you, Meera. Kiran?
Yeah.
Did you have any final thoughts that you wanted to add, or just an echoing
Good, I'm
of
good.
what
This is like, you know, you have to be, in my mind right now, everybody have to be careful about the invasive. Garlic mustard is really growing and, you know, enormously here in this Guelph. I found 5 years ago, there is none of the garlic mustard in some area, and now it's lot. And then we have to give this information to our city residents, like, you know, it is definitely coming to your yard also. Be careful and pick up right away, and then, you know, it sprays their seeds for the 5 years. They can grow, you know, grow every year, and it's cover on your yard. Nothing you can see in native, and all invasive will be around your yard. That's why we have to be careful. Maybe it is an eye-opening things, you know. We have to really, I don't know why it's my mind, and when I'm walking somewhere in the other area also, just my eyes go there. Oh my goodness, here is come here, you know. Everywhere I found those things. But, you know, it is edible plant, even better, you know.
Well, I hope that this presentation has been eye-opening for everyone on here and everyone who watches the recording, and that this helps us start to see our natural environment through these eyes of how we can support through helping return our landscapes to their more natural and native state. Thank you both so much for the amazing presentation and for sharing your thoughts. And thank you to everyone who joined us. And you guys did an amazing job, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Eleni. You did a good job.
Yeah.
Thank you, Meera.
Yeah, thanks.
Nice to
All right, I hope to see you all again on another 2Rivers Festival event soon. But for now, I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you,
All right.
everyone who
Okay.
participate here in today's, presentation. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.